Today, I want to address the 5 most frequent questions we're asked about the release process and specifically spring food plots. The most common question we receive this time of year is, what should I plant in the spring? There's a lot of variables to that. Are you in way western Texas where it's really a drought situation, or up in Ontario where Daniel's getting ready to go help a landowner? But if you look at the middle part, the bulk of the whitetails range, that's a pretty easy answer. Blends, when I'm talking blends, I'm talking multi-species. So for warm season, that's probably something like sunflowers and sun hemp and maybe some beans and peas. And of course you want a brassica in there. You want to blend of species, and that will help with different soil types and different growing conditions. Some species are more drought resistant. Milo's very drought resistant. Some species are really palatable, like soybeans, but many of you know if you plant a whole field of soybeans, an acre or two, they get about lip high and then they're gone. Deer really like soybeans. So at least for me here at the Proving Grounds, it doesn't work to plant a monoculture of soybeans because I got all that time, effort, and money into them and they're just gone. A blend is what I really like to plant in the spring. Clover's an all-time favorite, but I don't like planting clover, especially just all clover. Maybe you say, well, I'm mixing ladino and red clover or whatever. There's still clovers, and clovers can be great, man, just lush and out-competing weeds and certainly high in protein. But at some point, you're probably gonna get dry or cold or something, and that clover's gonna shrivel up, basically, and that's gonna let sun down to the soil, and weeds are gonna grow, and even more importantly, your deer are gonna have to go somewhere else to feed. Now, I like clovers, but I like strong annual clovers, especially in my fall blend that come on strong and provide tons of forage in that early part of spring right now when those does are in the last trimester of their pregnancy and bucks are getting ready to produce antlers. For a couple of years now, I've been planting the green cover blends, and they've got a couple I really like for the summer. They got the summer release blend. I actually helped design it, and that works great. If you're like me here at the Proving Grounds too, I haven't developed all the food plots I can yet, so I've got more deer or more mouths than I have food plot. And that's where the browse pressure release blend come from. I need maximum tonnage of forage for the relatively small amount of food plots I have. And when you're thinking that, if you think, well, the normal blend, let's just say beans, I mean, they're common, they're everywhere, right? If you plant all beans and they're really palatable, then a couple weeks later, they're just browsed off at the soil level. But if you've got a good blend, something that's palatable early, maybe that's buckwheat, something that's palatable later, and you got a kind of a time release blend, it's gonna work better for you. But now you think about, a lot of blends are based on an ag recommendation. Plant this many soybean seeds per acre, this many corn seeds per acre. But that's for an agricultural setting. We think about deer removing a third or half of our crop before the crop matures. Of course, they do that, you're gonna have weeds because there's a lot of sun hitting the soil, and some deer are gonna have some empty bellies. So if you're like me, the browse pressure release has a lot of seeds per acre, and it has a blend of really palatable, like soybeans, and not as palatable plants to make sure you go through the whole growing season providing high quality nutrition. Probably the second most frequently asked question is, when should I plant? And it's almost always people wanting to plant too early. And I had some buddies wanting to plant here locally a while back, and I think it was, in the low 20s last couple of days. So it wouldn't have been good, right? Warm season crops are not built to take 20-degree weather, especially as a seed or a seedling. So the most safest thing, just easy to go, is plant when the soil temperature at 2 inches deep, not the surface, at 9 a.m. is about 60 degrees, and there's not a great big cold front heading your way because soil temperature can drop. Now, why 9 a.m.? Well, the sun isn't out all night, obviously, and the soil is losing heat, especially if it's a clear night. It's losing heat. And the sun has to get up to about 9 a.m. to be given enough energy off to start warming up the soil. So 9 a.m. is about the coldest time of day in the soil. Now, why does cold matter? Well, if you've got a seed in there and it's a warm season plant and it's too cold, it's probably trying to germinate, it's too cold, it's taking in water, and the seed could die or certainly be weakened. And if it's weakened as a young, so to speak, it won't ever produce its full potential. Just like if you had a fawn that's really sick, full of worms or whatever, even if it heals, it probably will never express its full potential. So I want to plant when there's ample soil moisture and when the soil temperature is appropriate for those seeds just germinate quickly and blow out of ground. You have healthier plants, and because they're growing quicker, the deer aren't as likely to consume everything before they reach maturity. So my first priority is the soil's got to be warm enough. I want adequate soil moisture for rapid germination. And that may mean waiting, even if the soil's a little bit warmer, until there's a rain in the forecast, you've been in a drought. Remember, seeds are living organisms. They're kind of hibernating when they're in the bag, but they're still living. So you want to have ample moisture for those seeds to really blow out of the ground. If you're broadcasting, I like to broadcast seed right before a good rain, a ½ inch or more. Because those seeds are on top of soil, boy, they can get dry or desiccated real easy, plus turkeys, squirrels, birds eating them up. Broadcasting seed right before rain is probably the biggest factor in having a successful food plot when you're broadcasting. Probably the third most common question is, hey, do I need a soil test, or where can I get a soil test? Well, first part, do I need a soil test? I soil test every year. You could get away with soil testing every 2 years, maybe even 3 years. Soil testing is simply determining if there are adequate nutrients in the soil to have a productive crop, a crop that's producing a lot of tonnage. Now, a lot of people have heard me say, I haven't added any lime or fertilizer, except in test plots or a little hydro plot or something, in 8 years. But I've been improving my soil for a long time, and I still soil test. I want to confirm that there's ample nutrients in the soil. If you're doing the release process or you're improving the soil's health, you want to take that soil test to monitor your progress and see what's going on. And if you're early on in the process, you may still need to add some synthetic nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Now, if you're planting a really good blend like green cover, and they've got that coating with all the biology or microbes in there that are really good at converting nutrients from the base part of soil, rocks and the base part of soil, into plant food, then I strongly suggest you reduce the amount of fertilizer that's suggested or recommended on a soil test. That's one reason I've really come to like Ward Labs. Ward Labs, of course, is a big, giant lab. They do work all over the world, and they really work with farmers, but they've been really started helping people like me, food plotters, because they understand regenerative ag or the release process, and they can say, well, you know, I've got this crop, and I'm going to no-till drill. You're going to get X amount of nutrients out of that standing crop, and X amount out of other parts of the soil. You only need so much fertilizer. If you do the typical old-fashioned soil test, it's a chemistry test. I see this in the soil, therefore you need to add XYZ fertilizer. We now know without a shadow of a doubt the soil is alive. There are trillions of microorganisms in the soil. And when we take into account the nutrients they're going to release throughout the growing season, you can probably cut way down on the amount of fertilizer you need to apply, and that's a huge cost savings. That's one great reason to use Word Lab. Another reason is they have intentionally studied the blends I use, the green cover blends, and they can make recommendations specifically for them. You're not wasting any fertilizer, you're getting exactly what you need.
Growing Deer is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Also by Green Cover Food Plots, Winchester, Moultrie Mobile, Fleet Outdoor Apparel, Morel Targets, RTP Outdoors, Fourth Arrow, Hunt Stand, Scorpion Venom Archery, Case IH Tractors, Ward Laboratories, Burris Optics, National Land Realty, G5 Broadheads, Prime Bows, and Redneck Hunting Blinds.
Probably the fourth most common question we receive is, what equipment do I need to plant or establish my food plot? And I probably get that question more than some others because folks know I'm a huge fan of the no-till process. I've been no-tilling exclusively. I haven't owned a disc. I've only used a no-till for over 20 years. In the start, I rented one from my local NRCS office. And as I got more comfortable with that process and realized all the benefits, I actually saved up and purchased a no-till drill. But every year I still go out and plant food plots in the spring and in the fall with a broadcast spreader and over the seeder spreader. So I want to talk about both things. Now, a no-till is designed to just kind of knife through the soil. It's got a little coulter, a little disc, just makes a little slit in the soil, and drop the seed at whatever depth you set it up for, and then cover the soil back. It's the perfect planting machine. It's just really good. Where when you broadcast, you're putting seeds right on top of the ground. Now, if you broadcast right before rain, like we talked earlier, there's a really good chance of a high percentage of germination. If you only have Saturdays off and you go broadcast on Saturday and it doesn't rain for 2 weeks, a lot of those seeds are gonna die or be consumed by critters. There's still confusion after all these years about using no-till drill. You don't want a disc ahead of time. The soil's gonna be too soft and your plant too deep. No-tills are built to go over this existing, just like this food plot right here. Of course, it's early on, it's cold. I'm gonna let this grow up. It'll be, waist tall, chest tall on me by planting season, roughly mid-May here in Missouri, depends on the year. And I'll let that grow up and do what I call planting green. I will drill right through that standing crop. I'll place my seed in there, let them germinate a little bit. Man, this stuff's waist tall or taller. A deer's not sticking its head down in there to eat that. So my new crop gets off to a great start. And then I use a roller crimper to go right over that. Those young plants just bend over and stand back up. They're not gonna break. And I'll lay all that growth down. That's my mulch, that's my weed protection. So I don't have to use herbicide or very little herbicide. And also all that mulch is just a perfect slow release fertilizer. It's another reason I haven't had to use fertilizer in several years. But I realize not everyone can do that system. If you're interested, we got a lot of videos about that. I also use a broadcaster. Now, the big secret to a broadcaster, there's 2 big secrets to making this work for you. The seed needs to reach the soil. It's got to have seed to soil contact. Remember, seeds are living organisms. If it's hung up on some old plants or duff or on a rock or whatever, it's going to get warm and wet and germinate. Because the root is not in the soil, it's going to die. So you need seed to soil contact. That may mean you need to make a little fire break and use prescribed fire to remove that duff off the ground or the last year's crop. And if it's still green, you're going to have to use some herbicide to brown it up a little bit and get it to burn. Just mowing usually doesn't work because when you mow, you lay all that thatch down and it's still difficult for the seed to get to the soil. Some people broadcast and then mow on top of it. And that can certainly work if your mower's set pretty low and your mower doesn't leave big clumps everywhere. Most mowers leave a clump and then skip, leave a clump and skip, so you're gonna have really thick and the seeds won't be able to grow through there, and then thin and it's all weedy. So my preference is a no-till drill and then broadcasting where I know my seed's getting to the soil. And one more thing about using a prescribed fire to remove that duff, remember all the roots are still in the soil. You're still gaining on improving the soil health and water infiltration. You're just putting seed on there. And if you just burned it off and turned it black, of course the sun's energy's hitting it, don't spread that seed out there. You're gonna roast your seeds. You're gonna have roasted sun hemp seeds out there. Wait to broadcast before it rains. A really common question we receive is, how do I start the release process? And each year we get more and more questions as people realize all the benefits and cost savings of using that system. The release process, simply stated, is just releasing the soil or creation's potential to express everything it can. I often reflect back to the Great Prairie. I'm a big reader and I like to read about the early explorers. They talk about grasses and forbs, nose tall on a horse riding through the prairie, and 60 million bison. No one was fertilizing, no one was using herbicide. And the release process is following some very true, never violated basic principles. The soil always needs to be covered. When you disc or something, of course you're getting erosion. I won't go through all the principles, we've shared that before. And just applying those principles to your planting process and crop management. The easiest way to get started may be in the fall because there's less weed competition in the fall, but spring or fall, wherever you start, if you're starting the release process, you want to start with a clean slate. That doesn't mean you disc your ground till it's powder, but you want to get rid of the weeds or growing vegetation so those new seeds don't have competition. Maybe that's using a herbicide, maybe it's something else, but you want to start with a clean slate. You want to start with a really good blend. Planting 8, 10, 12 different species does much more for the soil than a monoculture of clover, beans, corn, whatever. Planting a blend, a diverse species blend, is very important to improving the soil rapidly. Then I want that crop to grow. If you plant a 1/4 acre plot and the deer, eat it down to the dirt in the first night once it germinates, you're not getting a big root system and you're not making a lot of progress. And that's where, in some situations, not all, you want to plant more seeds than what the seed provider recommended. I like to jam those seeds in if I know they're only going to get 7, 8 inches tall, because the recommendation was thinking, well, these are going to mature to a really tall crop and they outcompete each other. So if you got too many deer for the amount of food plots you got, you want to plant at a higher rate. So I'm starting the release process with a clean slate, no weeds, no competition, spring or fall. I'm going to plant a diverse blend. I'm going to plant at the right time of year, either 60 degrees in the spring, soil temperature 60 degrees and warming up, or in the fall about 45 days to 60 days before the first frost. And with the fall planting, it's critical to make sure there's ample soil moisture or rain in the forecast. In the spring, the temperatures aren't that warm, so you can get away with a little more because the soil's not as dry. But in the fall, if you don't have soil moisture, it's not going to work no matter how you plant. Those are the simple steps. We got a lot of videos to go through the detail. The release process has helped us save a bunch of money here at the Proving Grounds and produce bigger antlers. I think all of us are kind of related to that, but I'll take that one step further. Man, I just had some really great stew the other night made out of wild animals. Wouldn't you rather eat something that's eating where there's been almost no herbicide, no synthetic fertilizer, not a bunch of synthetic additives, that's eating something natural, than you would, think of a steer out of a lot with 10,000 other steers and they're all walking around knee deep in scat and feces and stuff. So it's a really, really healthy meat, and that's just part of the release process. One of the benefits is providing high quality nutrition, not just for deer, but for your family. Going through the process of planting, especially using the release process and these natural processes working together. And if you're fortunate enough to harvest a critter, being a provider for your family, well, to me, that's just a wonderful feeling and a great way to learn more about creation. But more important than all that, I encourage each of you to take time daily to be quiet and seek the Creator's will for your life and apply it. If you think the release process has a lot of benefits, following the Creator's will open up the best life possible for you. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.